She really is like an HR superstar. Like everyone, this is that royalty stuff, right? Listen, thank you both. Thank you for coming by today. And so we've been inspired. Let's jump right into it.
I feel like I should like hold the pillow.
Yeah, that's right. We love that. We love that. Catch a picture. Catch a picture. So we've been inspired the last couple of days. When we think about the folks, last night I got into my hotel room, and as I was walking down the hallway, I ran into a guy, Scott from AI Search. Are you in the room? Oh, there you are, there, front row. You got an early spot. And then Carrie, is Carrie in here? Carrie back in the back, an evangelist around this work. When we're thinking about how do we respond to modern work, and we oftentimes think of this as just an HR problem or just a technology problem. In fact, you two will tell us today, I'm sure, not so much, right? So many opportunities for employees to leverage these technologies, but how do you two work together, right, to drive AI adoption and transformation at Microsoft?
Well, I guess I'll start. We work extremely, I'd like to say we work well together, but we work a lot together. I would say, several years ago we were connected and iterating, but now it's like daily. So from an HR perspective, the partnership with IT, the product groups, and with marketing is very, very tight. I spend a lot of my time working on what we're doing, both in terms of the process reengineering, using AI, not just within HR and how we can use it to transform HR, but also what it means for our employees. How broadly we're going to bring AI to our employees, the change management, and all of that. And then the other thing is we like to think first party equals third party, so anything that we're doing, we're trying to productize. So whatever we're doing from an HR perspective and using it internally, we're iterating with Jared and the team to see if it can also be part of the product.
Jared?
Well, I'll tell a little story to give you a sense. We do work a lot together.
But you didn't say well.
No, and we work very well together.
She listens.
But now I'm going to tell the story. I was just on a call with one of Kathleen's senior leaders just a couple of days ago, and he said, Jared, let me start off with all due respect and tell you that your product just doesn't work. And,
wow.
We love that type of feedback. He was just giving us some feedback on, we had hoped it would do this. He was implementing it. He was helping us look at both the technology side and the people side of things. And I love the very open relationship that we have. We think of ourselves as customer zero for our business solutions, and we try really hard in our functions, and particularly with our people, to make sure that we're locked. Whenever I go to our senior leadership team, Satya will say to me, hey, have you worked with Kathleen? Have you worked with Judson? Have you worked with the functional leaders? And does the solution work? And I would say Kathleen is the leader. She has people assigned that work directly with my team. So.
Well, and I'd say that's another thing that's changed is I've literally pulled one of my most senior HR professionals, been an HR professional 30 years, is not a technologist, has been an HR partner to all the technologists, but now is really leading the AI transformation within HR and also for our employees and thinking about it from a change management perspective. And I think what's exciting is he would say 20 years ago, I never thought I could do this because the technology was so inaccessible, but now a lot of the technology, he says, I can actually lead because it is so much more accessible. But that's been really important too, is to have an HR leader partnered with IT and the product groups to say, how are we going to implement AI, not just within HR, but within the company.
How did you react to that? Seriously, like practically, because many of us, when we're in our HR roles, like some of us are afraid to go back and say, this technology is not giving me what I want. And then when you have built up the courage enough to do it, sometimes the sense is you're not heard or you're penalized for it. How do you react here? And what advice would you give to the practitioners?
Well, I would first start, I'll go back to the work that Kathleen's done together with our CEO, with Satya, over the last couple of years. They've created an environment where it's not just safe to say those things, but it's expected that you say those things. Like, we reward our leaders for clarity. And we teach, Kathleen's the first I'll say, clarity's kindness. And so it wasn't an attack on me, That's why I thought the story was useful. It was just like, Jared, if you expect to sell this to people, here's what's not working. I'm a practitioner. And the feedback was fantastic, and we're going to have another meeting, pretty soon with the senior executive team to review some of the things that they're telling us. So it was very good. But I think that environment, creating that environment, and maybe if I just bridge over to AI, you'll hear this from me a little bit later, but sometimes this technology just knocks your socks off. Like it just surprises you because it's so good. And sometimes it can't spell better than a first grader. You're just like, what? How is it this bad? And I think we do need to create a culture, an environment where people can be honest about where it's doing well and where it's not.
No, and I think that's part of the contract, though, which is, our job is to give feedback, and you also invite the feedback. But I think, establishing that up front, that we're here to make it better because we do want to ultimately have great products that people love. And I think it's taken that way, as opposed to a criticism or an affront or something.
And so many of the folks in this room, you don't work for Microsoft, therefore you're not in this business. I think it's very helpful to think about, even if you're not in the business of producing these new technologies and tools, that this relationship become a really critical part back home. So what are some key things, talking about your product, that you're hearing from your customers when you talk to them about this new AI Copilot? I tell you, the first time I mentioned the term Copilot, a technology co-piloting alongside an employee, it wasn't well received. People just, not the product directly, but the idea that human beings work with other human beings. Human beings don't work with technology in the traditional sense. And so, but you all have changed that. You've literally made this term acceptable, and it's very different when you talk now. But what are the biggest questions, feedback, concerns, or success stories around AI and Copilot?
Well, it's been almost exactly a year since we introduced the world to the product, to Copilot. It was the 16th of March last year, and man, what a whirlwind that was for us. At that time, nobody had the product in their hands, and so we could tell you it did everything. It's like, it slices, it dices, like you use it for anything. We were definitely wowed by it, but a year later, people are using the product. Couple of things that I'll note. We have gotten to the point now where if you know how to use it, and that's an important thing for us to explore a little bit, it uses your language, natural language. And so you would think, oh, I don't have to learn skills. But it turns out you do have to learn a new way of working to use it. But if you know how to use it, we feel like we've been able to prove that it can save you time. Our best users are easily saving over 10 hours a month. And what would you do with 10 hours extra a month? People tell us after they use it for about 3 weeks, that they don't want to go back to working without it. About 80% of people tell us that, so that's fantastic. We do see a very interesting stat that we call 11 by 11. After 11 weeks of usage, where someone has learned how to use it well enough that they're saving at least 11 minutes a day, they move over this tipping point. They really decide the future's here, I'm never going to work without a Copilot. So all of that is happening. At the same time, the most interesting thing that I never would have predicted is happening. Companies don't know what to do with that savings. Many companies are saying, I like it, Jared. All my people tell me it definitely saves them, time. But like, should we pay $30 a month for that? Just because I gave you 30 minutes back. And so we're in this moment right now where I think organizations and the idea of managing, your human resources is getting to what is people's time worth? What are they going to do with that time? How do we think about where this is all going? So it's now in 2024, March of 2024, what an interesting time that we're in, just because of where the technology is and the adoption curve.
Kathleen, so I got these 11 minutes a day or 10 hours a month. I'm intrigued by the question, what do you do with it? Like, have you heard those sorts of questions?
Oh, absolutely. And I think 11 minutes is low depending on what you've done with it. Right, so it could be 11 minutes because it's summarizing the meeting in a Teams meeting, which is super helpful, yes. Or it gave you a draft in Word. But we've now implemented it, and I know Andrew Winnemore is here, and he's going to have a presentation later in our HR service centers, where the agents who are, taking all of the questions about benefits and comp, et cetera, are now using it. And for us, we were overwhelmed. And so now we're just trying to find balance for our HR service professionals versus they were so overwhelmed with cases. The time to first response rate has improved 27%. So there are a lot of benefits that we're seeing. We talk a lot about more joy, less toil. So if you're in the service center, instead of having to look up across 5 different systems, that's the other thing. It's able to take all these disparate systems and consolidate it for the agent. Now you can spend more time consulting with employees and helping employees versus doing, what we say is kind of that rote work of looking up all of this content. And the AI, the co-pilot, not the autopilot, but the co-pilot's making a big difference. We're also seeing this in engineering, where with GitHub, et cetera, the productivity is really significant. In some cases, you mentioned other companies that I might work with, they're seeing like 30% savings. And I think, to that, you either say, now that's given us 30% capacity to do things that weren't on the list. Other people may say, gosh, do I need all of those people,
That's
right?
where you knew I was going to go.
I knew you were going to go there, so I just went there.
That's right.
And I think it depends on where you are, right? Like for us, we were adding so many HR service professionals. Now our ramp is a lot slower because we're able to scale with fewer people using it.
Yes.
And again, we're finding more joy, less toil. So that's a great message. At the same point, there are going to be other places where if you can make those kinds of savings, at some point you may not need as many people, and you mix shift that to something else.
Yeah, Kathleen and I, in advance of this, 2 weeks ago, I said, listen, we have to acknowledge that the employee population, as we've talked about yesterday, is really nervous about this, because while you tout 20, 30% savings, 11 hours a month, someone is concerned that there's some finance person out there saying that means you need, you can cut 10% of your staff. And so at once the technology is being embraced and run away from it at the same time, because you're like, all of us ultimately want to keep our jobs, right?
Yeah, for sure. It is the big question right now. And it's interesting, as I talk with different audiences, we have a lot of senior executives come through our executive briefing center, and I meet with many each week. And the more senior you are in an organization, the more your mind goes to, gosh, can we cut headcount? And I hear that all the time. We don't have all the answers for that, but I'll say a couple of things about it. First off, I think with new technologies, people always overestimate the short-term pain associated with them and underestimate the long-term gain. That's just what we do as humans, so that's important. There's no doubt that there'll be some shift in the economy and kind of how macroeconomically things work, and that's going to trickle down to how companies work. But I don't think, based on the adoption curve we're seeing right now, I don't think that's going to be like immediate. And I think one of the things for this conference to be thinking about is people get time to adjust to the technology, and they're going to want to understand how they can over time, be able to use the technology to essentially phase themselves out of the toil of their jobs and into the aspects of their professions, their disciplines, where they've always wanted to do more. And we see a lot of that. We see that in finance. We see that even in sales. We certainly see that in development. So that is a shift that I think will happen over time. And then maybe one last thing, at least at Microsoft, we do really believe that there are jobs that will always be best done by humans. And that's worth saying. Those jobs involve things like leadership. They involve things like judgment. They involve things like moral calls. They involve things like even managing people. There'll be a lot that these machines can do, for sure. We'll probably talk a bit more about that. But there are some things we just don't think they'll ever be able to rival humans.
And I think being transparent with employees and building that trust is really important. And also, we've done some, Brad Smith, who is on our leadership team, did this great historical analysis of major changes and reminding people that, AI isn't the first time that a tool has put this question into play. And I was sharing with Brad when back in the day, I was a secretary at a legal firm, and I literally typed memos. Yep. And it was back in the day where they brought in computers, and it was like, wait, the people who are using computers are going to replace us, and we were upset about that. And then you realize, oh my gosh, if I could learn the computer, instead of retyping this thing 5 times, because you go back and forth and they'd change 5 things and you'd have to retype the whole thing because the whiteout didn't work. Whiteout. Literally. Now it's like, oh, I use a computer. I just changed 5 words. I reprint it. Right. And so similarly, it's not like we've never gone through these shifts. That's right. But bringing people along, giving people the skills, making them feel like they can use the computer versus somebody else can use the computer. I think that's where, if you really lean into that, that's what employees want. They want to know that they can participate, that you're going to skill them, and that you're going to be transparent.
Jared, so there are a lot of different roles represented in the audience today. Most of them are HR folks, but we have CEOs, IT and digital leaders, CHROs in the room, and other business decision makers. What should all of these senior leaders, if there's a common theme, what should all of them focus on to drive successful adoption of AI? And let me say, in business, because I think there's this difference, like we play with AI on the side, you know, to do graphic arts and to do, you know, all that sort of stuff, but in business, because that's what we ultimately need to do in our, you know, to keep this thing working.
Yeah, you know, I would, you're not going to be surprised, but I'm going to classify what I see in terms of adoption in 3 broad groups. There is a group of companies out there, culturally, whatever the reason, who have decided, hey, this is the wave of the future. And while we don't know all the answers, we're going to embrace it. And we're going to make sure that our people feel like this is a part of our strategy. And those folks go all in. You know, they move quickly with us as a partner. They choose other partners in the space, and we can see them very quickly embracing the technology. Then there's the other side, essentially the Luddites, folks who are like, I don't know, you know, like, man, aren't there all these legal issues? What about our data? Blah, blah, blah. Like, they talk to me like all day long. And there are a lot of companies who are like that. And like, literally, I tell them at some point, I'm like, time out. Like, are you just gonna like talk me to death, or are we gonna do something about this? But there are so many companies out there that do that. And then there's this broad middle swath where people are dabbling. And so I kind of have 2 thoughts for you. Number 1, I would encourage you to think of this like the backhoe coming to replace the shovel. Like, it's coming. It's coming. There is no doubt that this is going to change the form, the substance of work. Anyone who tells you differently just has their head in the sand. And I would say you have to embrace that. Like, you want to be on the cutting edge. Don't be a Luddite. You know, do your very best culturally to get your group, your company to embrace that. And then number 2, very practically, what we see is that the best way to get out and use this technology is to actually incentivize your people to use it and to find ways to use it. So our best customers are out there running real competitions with their employees and saying, hey, I've got a bonus, or I've got some sort of reward for those that can find some very novel ways to use the technology in their function, in finance, in marketing. And that's really working, because when people are incented, they go out and make a big difference. The technology's coming, like, again, sparks of brilliance, you know, peppered with some disappointment as well, but it's coming. And I would just say my recommendation is make sure you embrace it and do so really responsibly.
The other thing that we've done is we've really looked at roles and our role descriptions and what are the tasks that are required to do the jobs. And you'll find that some of the tasks really do lend themselves to Copilot and AI. A lot of the tasks, a human still is going to have to do that. And when you start mapping the processes and you work with people, you say, hey, we could use it here, but you realize the whole job's not going to go away. Right? It's just parts of the job. Again, the toil can go away, and then hopefully more time for the joy. But getting into the details around the process and the tasks, that's the next level we're at, versus just implementing Teams and using a feature, or to your point, using it to generate a picture or something like that.
It is fun.
But that's fun too, yes. Believe me, I've used that for a lot of helping with school presentations and stuff.
So Kathleen, I got it, right? We've talked about embracing AI. Some of our employees are not convinced. And you've alluded to it already. While the secretary's story turned out right, look, you're the head of HR for Microsoft, so it worked out well for you. But are there real risks to employees? And you and I have had some real conversations about, if we want the trust of our employees, we've got to be honest with them. They see the threat coming. How do you at Microsoft, and how do you recommend we do, how do you balance telling people, like, there really is some risk to you, but this is what you can do about it, or not?
Well, I think the key is just to be transparent, and you know, if you're not transparent and if you're not honest, then you erode trust, and that becomes really challenging. I think we're a bit in a privileged position at Microsoft because, again, having done that task analysis, we don't have a lot of roles that are just going to go away. And we're in a position where we're trying to grow, but grow with less growth in headcount, as opposed to we're in a business where, you know, your business is shrinking, and therefore those savings really may come at a headcount reduction. And I think if you're in that business and then you just have to be honest with your employees. And then I think the key is, you know, what we've talked about is helping people see how they would get skilling. The other thing we spent a lot of time on is having people involved in pilots, having training, having SharePoints where people can go and learn so that they feel that they can be a participant in this versus this is something other people get to do. And we're not part of it. I mean, even at Microsoft, we started with a certain group getting Copilot, we had the haves and the have-nots. That didn't work well, so we quickly tried to get everybody to be the haves because people didn't like it when they felt, wait, we're not part of the in crowd. We're not getting access to this. We're going to be on the out, and that can create a really challenging dynamic.
So what do you do? And I want to push a little further on understanding, what if you are a business where there's a 10%, ultimately, all of those savings are going to inure to the benefit. And so you know that 2 years from now, name it, 3 years from now, that job that you're doing will go away. Any specific, and I know that's not, you have the luxury of not having that be your challenge, but what about many of us, overwhelmingly companies in America are small and medium-sized companies, and they're trying to survive. And so part of that says we've got to do more with less, and some people will be impacted. Anything that you could recommend we do back in our organizations? SHRM, we're 600 or so employees, and everyone will tell you, I've got some of my senior team here. I came in one day and said, hey, we're going to pay for AI for all of our employees. And I said, whatever. Now, of course, I had no idea what that meant, but it was because...
I liked it, though. I like it.
You liked it, that's right. And it's all Microsoft AI, by the way. But the idea is we realize that there are some people whose jobs are going to go away. And Kathleen and I had the conversation. She was like, yeah, Johnny, you got to be honest with people. I said, but, okay, so we're honest, but then what? What can we do either to... I was interviewing today with a guy from HR Brew, Adam, if he's in the room, and he was like, analogizing my example, if I worked at Blockbuster and then I didn't, we had a ton of employees whose jobs went away with Netflix, partially because we didn't prepare them for jobs in the Netflix world. They were very good in the Blockbuster world. What do you do when those people, their jobs are going to go away?
Well, I think partly you have to decide when you know for sure that you would communicate, because you don't need to scarf the organization 2 years in advance. No, but seriously,
that's right.
If you don't know, to Jared's point, people think this is going to happen overnight, and then we look at the change management, how long it's going to take. It doesn't work perfectly, so it may not happen as quickly as you think. And so when do you actually say that? But having gone through our own reduction force last year, the biggest learning we had is just being transparent about the business case.
So we've been all about AI and HI and human ingenuity at this event. Kathleen, as you look at workflows, and you talk about this a lot, how do you think about AI as a tool to augment and enhance, not just replace, human capabilities and outcomes?
Well, from an HR perspective, the workflows that we're looking at, and I mentioned we started with Ask HR, where we really thought that could give us huge leverage, and it has. The next big area that we're looking at is recruiting. And looking.
By the way, tell them what Ask HR.
Oh, sorry, Ask HR. If you think about any of the 220,000 people at Microsoft have a question, they go online, and then they can talk to somebody about benefits, compensation, et cetera. If that's not sufficient, then they can actually meet with an HR professional and have more of a consultative experience. But a lot of questions we get via Ask HR. So that was sort of low-hanging fruit, and we said, let's start with something that's easier.
Yes.
Although Drew might say it wasn't so easy.
So easy.
Now we're really looking at the whole recruiting process, and where in that whole recruiting process we can use AI to accelerate, to deliver better experience, to ensure that we're seeing breadth of candidates. And then the other area we're really looking at is what we'd call the talent marketplace, where we really understand the skills and capabilities and experiences and desires of our employees, and you're really able to match that with the skills needed in the roles. In fact, we've just gone through talent, we call them talent talks, where Satya meets with each of his direct reports for 3 hours to really talk about talent and what we're doing. And you think about trying to navigate that chessboard of experiences and who can you move, and so much of that is based on who you know,
right.
As opposed to using AI, say, wow, you don't even know about these 5 people over here, and you didn't know that so-and-so worked before Microsoft at this company with that experience, and how can we use AI to really help us in terms of building the careers for people internally. Back to your other question, the more information you have and the more information you can provide, we think that's going to help people find their next job as well.
Boy, you just piqued my interest, and the opportunity for us to directly affect our DE&I initiatives, our inclusion, our equity and diversity initiatives, because part of it is you're not intentionally not promoting people from historically underrepresented groups. You just don't know that
Absolutely.
they exist when you're trying to do that. Enterprise, your side, that's really an interesting workflow and application, huh?
No, and then linking that talent marketplace to, hey, I want that job, but that job requires these skills, then linking it to the learning assets and the different experiences that you should get. So that's a huge next opportunity for us.
Loving that, loving that. Okay, so anything you'd add to that? Because you've seen it in practice, no?
No, I don't know if I'd add anything. Nothing that'd be substantive, to be honest with you.
All right, well then let me have another question for you then, Jared. And this is a big one. Where does Microsoft think this is all going? Like, ultimately, where's this all going? Like, I shared with my team this term AGI, which is not just generative AI. This is the idea that artificial generalized intelligence, it can do anything that we can do. And some suggest that that's where they're headed. This whole thing is to literally replace human beings. I'm not so sure I agree with that. I hope not. God knows, including the CEO of SHRM, can save one job is mine, right? But what will the future of work look like? And I'm going to give you a couple of buckets. 3 years, 5 years, 10 years and beyond. I said a couple, several.
Okay.
But you get a point.
Here's your crystal ball.
That's right. That's right. And
go.
record this, guys. The Microsoft guys.
Okay, so I should first state that it's not Microsoft's objective, nor is it our purpose to replace all people on the face of the earth. I'll start there.
Thank goodness you're on stage with me. I wouldn't have thought to say that, but yeah.
Okay, so we do have a perspective, though. I'll talk about 3 different types of AIs. We call them agents that are in parallel being developed right now. You mostly are hearing about one of them right now, and that's the type that we call the personal assistant. That's the one that ChatGPT kind of brought to the forefront that we're trying to really popularize with Copilot. Here, just like the name suggests, we expect that every employee over time, regardless of what their job is, including frontline employees, will end up having a personal assistant who helps them get their job done, helps them access the right information, streamlines tasks, does all of that type of work. In this category, what you'll see from us is, number 1, those assistants will get smarter. As I indicated today, they're good at certain tasks, but not good at others. They will get quite smart, especially as the underlying, we would call them foundation models, the LLMs, get better. Number 2, you'll see them become more proactive. Today, most of these things you have to type something in, and then it comes back to you. But your day-to-day routine consists of a lot of stuff that it could predict. And so we think it could be much more proactive. And then number 3, we think that it should get good at automating tasks for you personally. As it watches you do things, it says, hey boss, I've noticed over the last week or 2, you seem to do this a lot. Can I help you out? That's coming. That will absolutely, you'll see all of that over the course of this calendar year. That's number 1, personal assistant. Number 2 is what we call a process assistant. This one, get ready, because this one is going to be very different. Whereas a personal assistant is bound to a person and it works on your behalf, a process assistant will be somewhat disembodied, meaning it won't just be attached to one person, even not just a group. It will be attached to a business object. This will be things like a process, like a close process at the end of the quarter, or for instance, a talent review process or a project management process. Here, the AI agent will know a lot about the business outcome and will be smart enough to pull on all the information and proactively be helping that process get, over time, more and more efficient. So we do anticipate with these process assistants that over time finance won't be as many people, but will be managers overseeing both people and AI agents to get the job done. And that's an important skill, we think, going forward, is the management of AI with the management of people. And then finally, the third bucket would be a point at which you start to have company-level agents that look across the functions and start to say, wow, I can look at the data, I can look at the processes, and I can start to help you deliver your value more effectively. So this would be a pharmaceutical company, for instance, that recognizes that something they're pioneering in one part of the company could be applied to another part of the company, and actually makes that suggestion in a way that a human would, but a human can't today because they just don't have that purview. Now, if we go kind of like those timelines, we would say over the next 3 years, we think personal assistants will be ubiquitous. They will start to become very economical because they really will drive savings. We think at the end of that 3-year time frame, you'll start to see process assistants. In the 3 to 5 year time frame, process assistants will be a normal part of business. You'll absolutely be doing the type of work that Kathleen talked about. You'll be looking at your functions and saying, where are we deploying AI and what savings can we get? And it probably will be 5+ years in that 5 to 10 time until you see real company assistants that are saying, hey, we can help you deliver your value. But that's going to be quite a ride. You know, all of those things are being worked on, not just by Microsoft, but by all the money that's pouring into the industry right now, and you'll see it from many different companies. So an exciting, exciting ride. I'll say, you know, this isn't just machines. You've been talking about that, I think, now for the last day. This is really people learning to work together with machines, and that's the job that, you know, that's why I'm here talking, because I just think you have an incredible job to do in terms of helping lead out in the revolution.
Guys, that was really well. I got to give you a clap. I mean, that was just. I mean, I was ready for Brave New World or something. That was just honestly, right?
Yes, go, Jared.
But
yes.
that was very well done. And who couldn't argue with? Imagine making the pitch to your employees that each one of you will now have a personal assistant. I mean, if you just think about the positioning of it, that's positive. It's going to make you better. It's going to make your life better. All that stuff. I hadn't used that term, but I like that. That's the goal now.
$30 per user per month. Their personal assistant for you.
Well, and on a positive, we've heard teams now say, who are really excited about Copilot, we have our team of 8 plus a Copilot person, right? And they think of that as the 9th person, and that's giving us extra capacity in a world where we can't afford to add more headcount. We can afford, though, I don't want to say $30, but now that you said that, no,
we're at home.
You know, but you start thinking about managing a team of human beings, also leveraging AI. You know, and again, that's why it's Copilot, not autopilot. We really do need the humans. As the chief people officer, we're definitely still going to need people for sure.
You know, it's really, it's so exciting that we've called this, and I hope you all are getting this, and we'll get this for the rest of the day. That's why this is AI plus HI. The message, the narrative has been so much about AI is going to eliminate the HI part. And just the narrative alone has to become more positive or expect people to resist it, right? And not embrace it.